everyone, welcome back to Let's Learn Food Science. You may have noticed that I have two different themes in my videos, and the white background themes are very specifically about food science technical content, so understanding food science skill development, and the black background themes are specifically about learning about how to learn. So we do have videos about adult education topics, but also understanding about thinking and problem-solving processes. And a lot of people have asked me, why are you doing this? Well, I find that it's very useful to have the technical skills in food science, but when we have gone out to work with employers across Canada and around the world, we are finding that so many of these different employers are asking for soft skills. So being able to lead, being able to solve problems, being able to think in creative ways. And so as much as I want to teach you technical concepts to be a very competent food science, I also want to make sure that you have the leadership skills and the problem-solving skills so that you can be effective as well. Many of you are joining me online for the Niagara College Innovation Program, and we also have subscribers from around the world, and it's kind of fun and exciting to meet you. These videos are embedded into my course where we have a wide variety of other content that helps facilitate the learning process and leads to a credential. Always welcome questions, but many of you will be following along with this in the course platform. So let's jump right on in. Edward DeBono's Thinking Hats is a thinking process that's all about thinking. And that kind of sounds silly, but at the end of this video, you'll be able to reflect on different styles of thinking related to problem solving using Edward DeBono's Thinking Hat Model. We'll switch from different thinking methods to approach problem solving from a different perspective, and we'll build a logical framework to help teams move towards solving a problem by guiding the style of the discussion. So, Edward DeBono was a Maltese psychologist, and he focused a lot of his research on organizational behavior and understanding how children and adults go through different thinking processes. He has written many different books, and they are accessible to the general public. Many of those books are available in public libraries and online streaming platforms. Those of you who are at Niagara College, you can find many of his books in our on-site library, and if you are unable to get to campus, I believe there's a way that you can order those books for delivery when you are on campus so that you can take some time and study his models a bit more. I find that they're quite intriguing and very useful for problem-solving processes, and so much of what we do is problem-solving. So, the 6 Thinking Hats model has gone through some different transitions. So there is a 7th hat in the process, but the main thing is the idea behind thinking about thinking. Edward DeBono's main premise was when you are thinking, you are wearing one of these hats, and that hat indicates the attitudes and behaviors and the type of language that you're using when going through that thinking process. So, just to quickly summarize, the white hat is all about facts and figures. So it's about showing evidence. It's about being very factual. The red hat's all emotion. So it's intuition, it's happiness, it's anger, it's frustration. It can be a whole range of emotions. So you can see how red and white are very intertwined because it's the sort of opposites between being factual, being very opinion-oriented. Red is linked to yellow. Yellow is very focused on the logical positives. So this is where you're focused on opportunities and optimism. It is a hopeful part, and it streams from the red hat in that many of the emotions felt in the red hat could be positives, but it's balancing the facts and figures of white along with the positivity. And in problem solving, oftentimes you need to focus on positive outcomes and possibilities that are in there. It links to the green hat. Green hat is all about creative ideation and really being divergent in your thought process. And as product developers, many of the students in this program are interested in product development, you often will dwell in that green hat thinking. But it needs to be countered with some planning and organization, and that's the blue hat. They're using the term process control. Those of us who are food scientists, we are not talking about being a HACCP coordinator here. Blue hat thinking is all about being deliberate and thinking about order and structure and planning within different thought processes. The black hat's the last hat in the classic 6 thinking hats, and this is the judgment hat, where you focus on advocating and really finding the faults and the problems within different scenarios. And oftentimes I've worked in teams where they're like, well, stop being so judgmental, but having a judgmental attitude in some circumstances is extremely important to be able to go through and determine the feasibility and the relevance of different concepts. And that judgment hat needs to be balanced out with the white hat, where it's focused on facts and figures. It needs to be balanced out with the yellow hat and the green hat as well, to say, so there's all of these different challenges, but let's focus on opportunity and let's focus on idea generation. So there is a role for the black hat. Last but not least is the royal hat, and that is the hat where it is focused on the entire thought process overall. It's often the hat worn by the facilitator in the group, the leader, but it could also be a technique used by people who are trained in thinking about thinking to help their team, help the people that they're working with change their attitudes and change their perspectives. Let's spend a little bit of time delving into each of these hats a little bit more. So white hat thinking is all about facts, figures, and objective data. And let's use a bit of a scenario as a product development team. If you were a white hat thinker in a product development team, you'd be steering the conversation or the problem solving by thinking, what are the facts? What are the figures that are available to us? Maybe we've got some market data. Maybe some new scientific research has come out. Maybe we have some really good demographic data. This evidence-based approach is extremely useful in product development. It's not just a creative process. You want to have facts and figures in front of you to justify what you're doing. Secondly, you've got that black hat thinking, and I've switched the order around here, but the order has an importance. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a couple minutes here. Black hat thinking is that critical hat, and it is all about judging and finding possible flaws, and it is about negativity, but that negativity is all about feasibility and safety and relevance and making sure that the ideas that you're moving forward are going to be useful ideas. So black hat thinking has a very important role as long as it's balanced out with a few of the other hats. Red hat thinking is emotionally driven. And again, you may be saying, well, some of these hats have a lot of negativity. Well, there could be negativity. If people are really angry in a group, you can counter it by switching the hats. That negativity aspect is all about switching hats. So red hat thinking could be really important because it could also be all about liking and enjoyment. And main thing about red hat is that it's emotionally driven and it's driven by intuition and hunches. If you need to be getting people out of an angry space, that's where you as a facilitator would be saying, okay, let's change the hat. Whether you're doing that overtly within a trained group or you're doing it by using your language. Let's focus on facts and figures. In essence, you've just changed them to a white hat thinking. Yellow hat thinking is all about the logical positives. So it's a bit of a balance between white hat and red hat, but it has its own hat. And I think there's a lot of benefits to that. It is about opportunism and optimism, that you're focused on what are the good parts of this whole scenario. So what are the opportunities? It's all very good to be focused on yellow hat, but you can also have lots of opportunities that are not very feasible. So again, yellow hat thinking needs to be countered you can have people who are just gushing with happiness and wonderful and everything's great, but you sometimes need them to be grounded back in a bit of black hat or white hat thinking to balance it out. Green hat thinking is all about creative ideation, and we will have some more videos that talk about ideation and provocative statements. Edward DeBono was a big proponent of using provocation as a creative thinking process. But green hat thinking is all about finding as many new opportunities and ideas as possible and uses a lot of divergence to make connection across different pieces of information. And so green hat thinking doesn't need to be linked to white hat thinking, because white hat thinking is often where you've got those facts, figures, and research that helps you generate new ideas and new concepts, because very few ideas just come randomly out of the sky. They come from understanding and observing. The more you have seen in this world, the wiser you will be, and the better you'll be at green hat thinking. Blue hat thinking is that procedural hat where you're focused on thinking deliberately about the plans and processes. And this is a really important hat in so many of the disciplines that we do in food science, because we need to be procedural, we need to be focused on regulations and structure for good functioning organizations. And within different teams, having someone who is that organized thinker has a lot of benefit to be able to get the structure to move organizations and problem-solving procedures forward. Blue hat thinking, though, does need to be countered with a bit of yellow hat thinking, and obviously some black hat thinking as well. The royal hat is the interesting one, and you often think of this as being the leader of the group, someone who has that ability of facilitating and helping people change their hats. It can also be used by people themselves within the team. So if you're a student, many of the people who are watching these videos are students, and you've been working in different group work projects, and so often you'll have someone, well, I just can't do this, or you can be a royal hat thinker and say, I see you're feeling really down, let's focus on some facts and figures, let's focus on building some plans and procedures so that we can achieve this goal. You can use the royal hat to change people's mindset and change people's thought process by using your words. Now, oftentimes within groups, within corporations, they'll have a corporate trainer or someone from HR come and train everyone in this model. And then the group leader could be saying, well, let's all be green hat thinkers right now. But if you walked into a group of strangers off the street or into a brand new team and you said, let's all wear our green hats, they'll look like, they'll just laugh at you and say you're a little crazy. More often than not, the person who's wearing that royal hat has been trained, but they're using more subtle facilitation. So let's say you're in a team work environment and there's a lot of argument going on. The facilitator would come in and say, all right, folks, right now I see there's a lot of emotional thinking and a lot of emotional conversation. Let's focus right now on facts and figures. Without using the hats terminology, the leader has, in essence, requested everyone to switch their hats. This is the power of the royal hat. That facilitation can be overt. It can be the leader of the group itself, but it can also be done by a well-skilled, just general team member to steer the conversation as well. Now, oftentimes there's what's called this Mosaic Model, and within Edward DeBono's writing, he talks about how within structured groups, you can use a deliberate switching of hats in a problem-solving model to help move the agenda forward in an effective way. So let's use the scenario of developing a new food product. First off, you're going to come in with a blue hat thinking. Today we have the goal of doing some ideation. We, at the end of this meeting, would like to have 3 new concepts ready to move forward. And so we're going to go through a procedure and have this conversation to see what we can come up with. Then, so you see how that was a blue hat. It was very focused on procedure and very focused on organization. From there, you might jump into a white hat thinking. Let's talk about some of the different facts and figures that we have available to us. Let's look at some market data. Let's look at some demographics. Let's look at some research. Very white hat thinking. And then from there, you might say, let's focus on connecting these ideas together from the white hat and generate some new concepts. Green hat thinking. Very divergent and generate a whole pile of different ideas. From there, you might start evaluating the green hat ideas by using some red hat thinking. How are you feeling about these ideas? Which ones do you really like? Which ones do you hate? Use that emotional response and drive into which ones are really connecting with people emotionally. From there, you can transition into yellow and say, well, let's focus on the positive emotions when resonating with those different ideas. Which ones do you think are clear winning ideas that are going to be opportunities? Yellow hat thinking. So from there, you might have triaged your green hat list into ones that are really positive in the yellow hat thinking. Now is our time to put on the black hat and say, let's do some feasibility assessment. We've got perhaps 10 different ideas here. Which of these 10 different ideas are actually feasible? Which are going to be cost effective? Which do we actually think we can pull off? And use that critical thinking hat of the black hat and whittle that list down again. From there, you've got to go back to a bit of blue hat thinking, because now you've got to have an action plan. You need to start assigning different tasks to people to achieve that goal. And so there's a bit of a cycle that you can use when deliberately thinking about facilitating teams. And you can use your language and use your structure, helping people think through the different thought processes to help them be a bit more successful. So, hope we covered off all of our learning outcomes for today. You know where to find me if you've got questions. I always love hearing from you. Take care, and we will talk again soon.